I'm Dean Sellers, current owner of Dan Gurney's M1 McLaren, here today at Velocity Invitational. This is the 60th anniversary of the founding of Bruce McLaren Motor Racing.
We'll get back with Dean shortly, but in the meantime, I would like to share with you the unique history and distinctive characteristics of the successor to the original McLaren M1, the Gurney McLaren 2-64. Bruce McLaren was a competitive driver, but his legacy stems from his abilities as an analyst, engineer, and manager. In 1964, Bruce and a small team built his first M1 ground-up sports car to be classified BMMR 1-64. In due course, the newly minted M1 was taken to Goodwood for extensive testing seen here, minus the bodywork, aiming to get the chassis handling well prior to adding the aerodynamic envelope. Also, we see Bruce in the car being joined by noted motorsport journalist Dennis Jenkinson. Then it was off to the Canadian Grand Prix to face a formidable entry list, including Jim Clark's Lotus and multiple Ferraris, but it was Jim Hall's Chaparral that set the pace. Hall crashed out early on, and aside from throttle linkage problems, the new M1 finished third place, breaking Dan Gurney's 2-year-old lap record by 1 second, a good start in the opening round of the North American Big Money Sports Car Series. At the LA Times Grand Prix, Dan Gurney was on the pole in a Lotus 19B. Bruce was alongside. Within the first few laps, Bruce set a blistering pace, increasing his lead over Gurney to an astounding 30 seconds. Indeed, this remarkable advantage, on a track that Gurney knew well, gave rise to Dan's interest in the M1.
There's the flag. The Nassau Trophy race is underway.
After the final Nassau race, the M1 chassis 1-64 was set aside at Team HQ, with a few parts being used by Howden Ganley to fabricate the first M1A prototype that Bruce was to drive during the 1965 season.
McLaren has also taken sharp and tries the inside.
Seconds to go. And away, with Surtees surging into the lead and Gurney's clutch smoking.
In early 1965, impressed with Bruce's M1 performance the previous year, Gurney made 2 trips to the team factory to order an M1 to be built in-house by McLaren. Evidence might suggest the previously set-aside chassis 1-64 was used to construct the new Gurney M1, suitably rebadged as Chassis 2-64 and delivered in August for the Guards Trophy race at Brands Hatch. After which, the car was shipped to North America for the LA Times Grand Prix.
This is the Los Angeles Times Grand Prix, a star-studded field and an array of lethal horsepower rarely seen in American road racing.
The entry list included Jimmy Clark, world champion and Indy 500 winner in a Lotus 40, former world champion Graham Hill of England in a McLaren Oldsmobile, Bruce McLaren of New Zealand, whose name graces one of the world's great race car lines, versatile Dan Gurney of California in a McLaren Ford.
A sun-baked crowd, upwards of 85,000, await the start of the Times Grand Prix. 77 laps and 200 miles through the twisting, tortuous Riverside track. The total purse is just under $50,000. The cars are approaching from the false grid. A field of 40. The most impressive array of cars and drivers seen anywhere in road racing. The flag is ready. They're moving the problem car off, and there's the start. Walt Hanskin jumps out in front very quickly from the second row. Number 77 is Dan Gurney's McLaren Ford. Gurney was 15th on the grid and still well down in the pack. Jimmy Clark, Grand Prix champion this year, is behind Gurney in his Lotus 40 long back straight. Dan Gurney outdrags Graham Hill, but Hill goes in deeper. Outbreaks Gurney and keeps third. breaking speeds here at the Riverside International Raceway. The race average well over 100 miles per hour. Gurney is in the pits. It appears brake trouble will sideline the native Californian. Gurney was as high as 4th before quitting. He's had trouble with this race before.
Hello, I'm Chuck Parsons. I'm lucky enough to be here at the Velocity Invitational event that's celebrating 60 years of McLaren cars. And they've been generous enough to bring a number of cars from their own collection. It's also amazing how many individually owned McLaren cars have also shown up and are running and racing on the track this weekend. The one car that is most interesting to me is a car owned by Dean Sellers that was sold to Dan Gurney in 1965. It's a beautiful car. It's actually going to be on the track tomorrow doing exhibition laps. It's an incredible piece of history. Glad to be here and be part of it.
After that special onboard excursion, let's get back with Dean to survey a few more compelling features and wrap up this fascinating journey exploring the rare Gurney McLaren 2-64. Thank you for joining us.
So when Bruce McLaren first built this car, he was really adamant about power to weight. The aluminum V8 Olds was the lightest power available at the time. When Gurney requested a car with the amazing history Gurney had with Ford, the car was converted. It was basically a 289 GT40 package. It has all the original 180-degree exhaust as run on the GT40s. You've even got a little pocket out here for the one that is up and above the body area. One of the major modifications that Dan Gurney made to this car was actually adding this roll bar support. This chassis did not have that support when Bruce McLaren provided it to Gurney at Brands Hatch. So by the time this car got to Riverside, it had this support, supporting the roll hoop, as well as these louvers. These are all done by Dan Gurney's crew. It's the only Mark I that we've ever seen that's had this type of a modification made to it. We did have an interview with him in 1991, Sports Car International, where they had talked to him about the car, and he remembered very clearly buying it directly from Bruce McLaren, that it had no affiliation with Elva or Trojan. They were the production cars, and as such entered it and raced it as BMMR 264 as a team car in the two events. Subsequently brought it back to America, raced it in the USRC race at Riverside, the Times Grand Prix in '65, and that is basically the conclusion of all the professional race history that this chassis has.